Hello everyone, and welcome to the 2023 Narrative Dev Jam hosted by Staffs University in partnership with Panivox. My name is Luke Hazlitt, and I will be your host for this event. In this video, I'm going to go over everything you need to know to get involved, including details on how to get involved, the development rules for the narratives, and that ever important theme reveal, and also some context on how you might want to approach that theme. We'll also have some keynote speakers from guests, and these guests include game industry veterans, as well as some established academics in the field of games education. And then finally, I'll round things off with announcing what kind of prizes are up for grabs, as well as how to submit your narrative games at the end of the jam. To begin with a little bit about myself, as I mentioned, my name is Luke Hazlitt, and I am a games design lecturer at Staffs Uni. I completed my bachelor's and master's degrees at Staffs, and during that time I got involved with extracurricular activities, became a featured writer on Gamma Sutra, and ended up winning multiple awards for my work. And this is the kind of stuff that I found created lots of opportunities for powerful discussion points for my CV, especially when I graduated. And it got me straight into interviews with AAA studios, some of which had headhunted me personally. And in the end, I actually decided on a career in games education. So I completed my teaching certification at Staffs, and I'm currently in that late stage review of my own PhD that researches on how we can develop narrative design in role-playing games specifically, using natural language interaction for non-player characters. And that's quite a mouthful, so I normally tell people it's all about talking to characters in a game like Skyrim in a way that you would with a virtual assistant like Alexa. It's actually all those powerful talking points of my CV that I mentioned that helped me land a fully funded PhD game scholarship, and now I'm a full-time lecturer. I lead modules on fundamental game design, analog game design, and narrative game design. Now it's that last one that really means something to me, as narrative has always been a big passion of mine. As an awkward teenager in the 2000s, I ran a popular X-Men text-based RPG forum. As a university student, I worked with a very talented friend of mine on a comic that had over 15,000 readers, and recently I worked with Panivox to secure a £500,000 grant that enabled me to hire a research associate and start investigating how we can develop narrative games as solutions for cultural impact. I'm also a big advocate for vocational education, which is why I want to develop opportunities like this Narrative Dev Jam to allow people to practice their own craft and build their portfolios, giving you the potential for talking points in your own CVs. And I've partnered up with the games industry to help with this. But that is enough about me. Hopefully that gives you some context on where my motivations lie within games education. So next we're going to hear from our first keynote speaker, Professor Chris Hedliand, who will speak about the benefits of Game Jam participation.
Hi, my name is Professor Chris Hedliand. I'm the head of the Games Development Department here at Staffs University. I'm an educator with over 20 years teaching experience, and last year I was awarded a prestigious National Teaching Fellowship. I'm also a professional video games developer and a gamification consultant, and I own a small virtual reality game studio. Our award-winning games department here at Staffs is one of the largest in the UK, and certainly one of the largest in the world. We have over 1,500 students and around 70 academics across our Stoke and London campuses. We also cover the full range of games topics, and our students can study degrees in art, design, production, development and programming. We work very closely with industry, and this jam is an example of one of those important relationships. A close link with industry ensures our students get access to some amazing opportunities, just like this, and we ensure we are preparing our graduates for the games industry of the future. In recognition of our work, we were awarded a Tiger Industry Award in 2021, and last year we won the Education Initiative Award for our sector-leading one-up placement scheme, where students had the opportunity to work for an in-house studio and helped us to build the Staffsverse metaverse platform. Our department is part of a larger games community at Staffs, which includes esports, CGI and animation students. We also work really closely with students in art, media and computing, and we host a wide variety of student societies, which cover almost every niche in games fandom. I really hope you enjoy the Game Jam. Jams are a superb way to learn. During a jam, you can experiment with new ideas and concepts free from the inherent restrictions that come from assignments or commercial projects. It's a great chance to push yourself and test the limits of your creativity. A jam is an amazing opportunity to create something unique that can feed directly into your portfolio. Or you can simply explore a tool or technique that you may not have used before. I honestly think that every game student should really try to do at least one jam during their time at university. It's so important. Beyond the impact on your portfolios, jams are a great way to develop key transferable skills such as teamwork, communication, time management. At Staffs, the team and I value jams so much that we include them in our Welcome Week activities, so new students get to benefit from these experiences immediately. We also encourage everyone to take part in events such as Global Game Jam, where you can be part of an international games development community. It's honestly awesome. You may not have done one before, so I'm going to leave you a free piece of advice that I hope will help you during this event. The first is to be mindful of your time and don't overextend. It's better to create a small prototype than something huge that you may not have the time to deliver. The second is to work with people that you normally wouldn't. Take the opportunity to join a group of other individuals and broaden your network. If you're a programmer, work with an artist. If you're an artist, work with a designer. Building these links are absolutely vital. The final piece of advice is probably the most important. Make sure you manage your time and take breaks. It's very easy to get into a crunch mindset when doing a games jam and work through the night without breaks. It really isn't a great habit to get into, and you will never produce your best work at 3 AM having not slept for a day. Look after yourself, be kind to yourself, and stay hydrated. I hope you have an amazing game jam. Best of luck. I really look forward to seeing what you produce. Take care. Have a great time.
Thanks, Chris. There's some really good advice there to take away for how to participate in these kind of game jam scenarios. Now, let's talk about the details of this jam, starting with the theme reveal, which is Games for Impact. Let's give some context on what Games for Impact actually is. These are also known as serious games or social impact games, and they are games that are designed to educate or raise awareness about a particular topic. They are often used as some kind of tool that can address a wide range of issues that include things like climate change, or health and wellness, or culture and heritage. And normally they teach the player how to consider perspectives about a topic that might teach them something that they can take away from the game. But to build your narrative games, you're going to need a platform, and that's where our partners at Panivox come in. This jam will require participants to use their RichCast application, which is a very streamlined narrative game development tool. And to talk about it, here is our next keynote speaker, Philip Oliver.
Hi guys, I'm Philip Oliver, and I'm one of the Oliver twins. I have a twin brother, Andrew Oliver, who unfortunately can't be with us today. We started making games back in the early 80s. It came about because we were inspired by some of the very early games that we played back in 1980. We're not talking games like you know, we're talking Space Invaders and Pong, really basic and black and white. We enjoyed playing them, but we were curious as to how they were made, and we really wanted to get into making our own games and got a home computer, and that's where we started to learn how to make games. The games that we first made were really very, very basic and not very impressive, and looking back on them, a little bit embarrassing, but everybody's got to start somewhere. However, we honed our skills, and over several years, we managed to make a lot of games. In fact, you may have heard of a company called Codemasters. We did a lot of their very early games. Their first car racing game, Grand Prix Simulator, that was one of ours. We did a series of games starring a character called Dizzy. That was hugely successful in the mid-80s and late 80s. And we've created so many other games. We went from the 8-bit to 16-bit and all the way through. We've programmed on all computers, all the generations of consoles. And there's a few of the games up behind me. This is about a quarter of the games that we've made. Some of you may have actually seen some of these games. PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2 games are up there. We've got things like Fusion Frenzy, Epic Mickey, there's fun Burger King games, a crazy number of games. Now, we've learned an enormous amount about making games over the years, and we now want to inspire the next generation, that's you guys, to also be able to make games. And we've got a lot of interesting lessons that we could try to teach you. Obviously, I can't do all of that now, but one of the things that we decided was that the hurdle to making games is actually a very high hurdle. A lot of people want to make games, but it's very difficult. You have to learn something like Unity or Unreal first. That's quite a hurdle. And so we came up with the idea of actually making a tool set to make making games an awful lot easier. And that's RichCast. RichCast is an editor and a platform and a store and a player so that you can create your very own games, narrative games at the moment. That's what we're specializing in, which you can then publish, and then anybody can play on any device. This takes away any need for coding to actually show your skill as a game designer. And that is what we are challenging you with during this game jam. We want you to come up with the best games possible using RichCast, and we've even got some prizes. Well, with this Dev Jam, we're looking to see how you can develop a really interesting, interactive, narrative experience, more based on something to do with education or health or culture and education. Now, that doesn't mean to say they have to be boring. In fact, they need to be entertaining. They need to be engaging. They need to make those topics come alive and for the players to want to engage with them and learn from them. And that's the challenge we're setting with this Dev Jam.
Thanks, Philip. So now we know the theme and the tools you're going to be using. Now, RichCast is an early access platform, so a lot of you probably haven't had the chance to try it out yet. So I'll leave some links in the description below to help you get started. With this jam, we're taking note of the rising trends for encouraging a healthy work-life balance. And so the jam duration is going to last for 2 weeks, from the 9th of January through the 20th. This should give those of you that are not familiar with the RichCast platform plenty of time to practice before developing the narrative game that you want to write. At the end of the jam, you should submit a recording of your game to the Microsoft form that's also going to be linked in the description below. And this will be your submission to the prize pool, which is something we're going to talk about in a little bit. When it comes to the details of what you should be creating, we want to see interactive narratives with a duration of around 4 or 5 minutes. It might not sound like very long, but this gives you more options for replayability through lots of branching path stories, and the RichCast platform is really easy to facilitate that kind of storytelling. If you find you're able to pick up the RichCast app very quickly, which honestly is actually quite easy to do, then you can submit multiple narrative games to the prize pool, but do bear in mind that each unique game will only be counted once, and the winners are not chosen at random. So you may wish to spend more time on polishing the game feel of the narrative game that you want to submit. Now, if you're beginning your narrative journey and you're not quite sure on how to go about the process, our last keynote speaker is Danny Flint. He's going to talk to you about the methods that he's employed personally when developing interactive narratives for RichCast.
Good morning, my name is Danny Flint. I'm course director for Games Design and Concept at Staffs Uni London, or SUL as we call it. We opened our doors in 2019 and then soon had to close them again because of the pesky pandemic. This was a blessing in a way, in that we had to get used to very quickly new ways of working, many of which studios have continued to work under, such as remote working and hybrid working and these new models. Last year at SUL, where we also run the narratology modules, we put on, it was open to everyone, but we put on an event called Threads and Tales, which was a couple of days of industry talks followed by a jam using RichCast. So a little bit of a pilot for the bigger jam you guys are doing now. So we got some narrative designers in to talk to the students, give them some ideas. I've got those talks which I'm going to share with Luke so that he can link you to them if you want to watch them. I mean, they total about 5 hours, so you have to set aside some time, but they're really worth watching. They're mainly industry professionals working on indie games, so narrative-based indie games. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, really interesting talks. So I'm just going to, summarise some of the advice that they gave the students, and then also I'm going to come on to a little bit of my own advice that I've discovered or developed or been given by the guys at RichCast. So I'm going to start with some of the advice that our guests came in and gave. So one of the first ones that they all said was show your work. Nobody can see it if it is hidden away on your home machine or on your USB or on your hard drive. Show it on portfolio sites, share it with your peers, get it onto your forums, including the full process where you can. People like to see your starting ideas, how they developed, why you changed them. Was that from feedback from other people, or other decision-making processes that you went through to change your ideas? Show us the lot. On these portfolio sites, people are going to be cruel sometimes. That's just the way it is. Ignore those people and focus on the people that genuinely want to give you constructive feedback and advice. Okay, so another bit of advice is don't be precious. When people advise you to change something, it's probably good advice, especially if they're experienced in the industry as a practitioner or an educator. Be ready to let go of an idea that you are holding on tightly to if other people don't think it's as great as you do. This many people have had to do this, me included. Everybody in the industry at some point will have had their idea changed or altered. It's fine, just run with the new idea, make that one your own. Network. That can mean lots of things, but in this instance I would say enter competitions and get involved in game jams. I went to my first game jam in 2016, actually run by Staffs University, long before I worked there. I just went for a bit of fun, but I've ended up doing at least one every year since because it's addictive. It was brilliant. There's the team building, the challenge of it, feeling part of something bigger. Plus you get to do something outside of what somebody's paying you to do. So you feel a little bit more ownership of it. Okay, so while we were running the Threads and Tails jam, I myself was learning the software. I was helping the Panivox guys iron out some creases. So I was, sending some feedback. But while I was doing that, I decided to write my own branch narrative game, and I decided to semi-anonymously pitch it to their creators fund to see if they would pay me to complete the title, and fortunately I was successful. So since then, quite a few months ago, I have been working with them to develop my title. So here's some advice that I've kind of got from my milestone meetings. They're not weekly, I think we do them like once a month or something like that, where we talk through how the development of the game has gone. Obviously, as a full-time course director, I'm quite busy, so I haven't had that much time to devote to it full-time, and they're understanding of that, which is really good. So they're not about crunch. They're about getting a good product out, getting a good project completed. So that's one thing I really liked about it, is that the milestones for my particular contract are flexible. When I started my title, which is a Lovecraftian-esque tale, I originally just had one main character, and then there were some things that came from that meant it was really, really obvious that there should be a companion character. And I think all of the advice I'm going to give comes down to having a companion character that you, as the player, talking to the game, can talk to, rather than just instructing the computer, if you like, to turn left, go straight on. You're actually conversing with an NPC. So, companion characters are great in all kinds of games, literature too. It takes the protagonist's thoughts out of their head and into the natural speech they would use in conversation. it's more relatable, more natural dialogue. Think about games you've played where you are privy to the characters' inner dialogue. Sometimes they mumble to themselves something, and compare that to the natural dialogue between, say, Joel and Ellie in The Last of Us, which is kind of woven into the gameplay and a much more enriching experience because of it. Branch narrative games, especially voice activated ones, are crying out for you to talk to the character, to ask the companion to look under the bed, or let's do it together, let's look under the bed, rather than arbitrarily commanding the computer look under bed, which is how the older text adventure games were obviously sort of controlled. Companion character again. In my game, at one point, the player character is driving the companion character to a destination, but it became obvious that would work much better if the companion character was at the wheel, so us as the player could give them instructions, such as take a left or turn right. Eventually, these kind of conversational games will become a staple and a genre of their own. AI-driven analysis of the language input of the player will become perfected. Responses will not always have to be scripted or scripted by a person with just a few variants to add variety. But entire sections, scenes if you like, could be AI ad-libbed, sort of scripted on the fly, based upon character traits and direction of conversation, and sort of natural. The AI voices will become more natural sounding. Still now, and they're getting much better. Still now, you can tell that they're not a real human, but you know, there's leaps and bounds being made in that area as well. So soon, I think, you know, these things are going to become really amazing, and we're going to be able to really talk to the NPCs and then talk back and us have these amazing conversations, which I really think will enrich certain types of games, not all types of games. So it's an exciting journey, and I think we're really at the beginning of it. So some other bits of advice. Don't kill the player too easily. In my game, there's a bit where the character and his sister, who's the companion character, they're on a boat. So you can choose to tell the companion to steer straight, stay on the same course, heading towards a rock, swerve left or swerve right. If the player chooses go straight, I originally had them crashing on the rocks and dying immediately. But after I went to one of my milestone meetings, the guys gave me some advice. Don't kill them straight away. Give them a chance to redeem the stupid choice. Okay? So, if you say straight ahead a second time, you can have the companion, so this is where the companion comes in again, resist and say to you, are you sure that's a really stupid idea? There's a rock approaching. And you can add one to the dissuade variable, for example. But if you still insist as the player to go straight, she can try and dissuade you again. But then for a third time, and we'll add another one to the dissuade variable, if you still say go straight on, then it's perfectly acceptable to crash the player on the rocks and kill them because they deserve it that time. Scope, you hear that word a lot from us. Plan it out well. Even in a 48-hour jam, you should set aside 1 to 2 hours just planning, sitting and planning and getting the scope about right. And with an extended jam, so spread over a week or two, you know, make that proportionate. Maybe spend a day planning. I'm not sure of the structure that Luke has planned for you, but I'm sure he's factored in, you know, that perhaps you should be setting aside a day for the planning aspect. Another bit of advice is communication. don't be storing important bits of the project on one of your USB, and then you go home and you fall ill and you're incommunicado, and the progression of the project is scuppered by that. Don't let that happen. That happens far too often, and now with Teams, OneDrive, SharePoint, all these kind of stuff, it shouldn't really be happening now. So just try to factor that into your planning also. Don't make puzzles too hard. You guys are making just a short game. Make it so that anyone that plays it can get through it. And this is a problem from my experience. I had a puzzle that was too hard. It was too finicky to kind of work out what the password for this telephone answering machine it was. That's since come out of the game anyway, but it was just a bit too tricky, and it was at the very start of the game, so I was starting the game off too difficult, really. Clues. Some of you might want clues in there, so here's some advice. I've got clues in mine. So in mine, there's a hotel room where the player needs to find an old coin hidden in a book, which is then needed to pay the ferryman. So there's no guarantee that the player character will ever look for the book, and then therefore there's a complete roadblock for them. They can't get further in the game. So we discussed a good way to tackle this. Frankie, who's the sister of the player character, has her own companion, a black cat called Dietrich. Some of you might have seen my cat walk past me briefly. So a black cat called Dietrich. In the game, I've got a simple variable count up. So as the player is looking around the room for clues, if they don't look at the book, but they do look at other things, each time they look at something, I've got a variable counting up. And when it reaches, I've not decided what it is, but 6 or 8 looks, I'm going to have the cat go over to the bookshelf and start sniffing or scratching at it. And that's kind of narrowing the search area for the player, letting them know there's something there that you should be looking at. So that's one way of dealing with it. And another way is having multiple clues in different places. Sorry, the same clue in multiple locations. So that coin could be on the bookshelf, but you could have a different coin that's behind a painting in the bar or something like that. And then once that clue is collected from that location, it disappears from the other. So you have a variable that's like coin found, set to true. Then that player will never find that coin in another place. So if you went back to the room then and hunted in the bookshelf, it will just say, just some dusty old books, nothing to see, or something like that. Final bit of advice, telegraphing. So that's signposting to the player where they are going, why they are going there, and what they need to get or have in their inventory to get there, if you need something like the coin or a key. Some instances of telegraphing could be physical signs, like mine's on an island, so there is some physical signs to the locations. If it's a bit of information that you want the player to retain, then perhaps consider having something like notes in a journal that they could refer back to once they collected it. Or occasionally you could have your companion again. See how they're quite important in that I've used them about 5 or 6 different ways to help the player. Why not use the companion to occasionally pipe up with something like, we really should be trying to get to the island tonight, to remind the player what it is they're doing. Okay, so I'm going to leave you there. Hopefully some of that was good advice. I wish you the best of luck in the jam. I'm really looking forward to playing some of your games, and good luck.
Thanks, Danny. Lots of really useful advice there, and I'll leave links to the talks that you mentioned in the video description below. So now for the final details that I'm sure you've all been waiting for, the incentives. So our partners at Panivox have kindly provided several rewards to help spur your motivation. This prize pool consists of 3 cash prizes, each at the value of £100 for the top 3 narrative game entries, as judged by staff at both Panivox and Staffs Uni. On top of that, Panivox are going to be looking for the most innovative and interesting projects that they will financially fund to progress towards publishing on their platform. This includes paying for things like polished assets, professional voice acting, and even comes with some mentorship from their own team of narrative game designers. And then lastly, there will also be further CV boosting opportunities with work experience in the field of QA that will help get some of you participants a head start on your career ladders. And that's everything, so let's recap. The theme is for Games for Impact. The Game Jam length is going to be 2 weeks, ending on the 20th of January 2023. Your narrative games should be built on the RichCast application. Narrative experiences should be around 4 or 5 minutes long. Submissions should be recorded and submitted to the link that's below. Multiple submissions are allowed, but each unique game counts only once. And the prizes include 3 £100 rewards, fully funded publishing opportunities, and potential games industry work experience. And with that, you now have 2 weeks to use your time wisely. Download the RichCast app from the Windows or Mac application stores, play a few titles, get an idea of the kind of things you can do within the platform itself. Practice a little bit with that no-code editor that they're so well known for, and then get creative with your own interactive narrative ideas. I wish you all the best of luck, and remember, have fun being creative.